Hey guys, my name is Rai. Today, I wanted to walk you through how I did my plus 19 Floodgates on my Vengeance Demon Hunter. This involves walking through every pull, every gather, how to live, and help enable your team to do the most damage in this pretty difficult keystone. I'm going to be walking you through how I did my route, what we decided to do for skips, walking you through each skip, and actually showing you how I blundered in this first attempt and then got it down the second time. The biggest mistake I still see Vengeance Demon Hunters make a ton is spend their sigils way too early. You're going to see in this first pull, this gather involves tagging, I think, up to 5 packs, and I make a pretty big mistake, and I end up actually almost letting my team die. I do recover, but I'm going to show you how to do this pull properly and show you how I fucked it up. In this first gather, I am going to be going right to pull a couple additional mobs to what you might be used to. This first pull does involve a Shreddinator and the typical lust pull, but I'm going to be going right and grabbing 2 hyenas and 2 soldiers. If you want to do this route, I have it available linked to my Discord, and though it's really fast, it is pretty difficult, and I'll walk you through some of the pain points. Here, I go up and immediately hunt the first mob. I'm still not spending my fire sigil as I'm going to want them for threat in this pack. I glaive once, I brand, I fracture, I soul cleave, and I'm going ready to get into Feldev. Once I'm in Feldev, I'm going over and taunting in and tagging the mobs on the left. Once they're all in, I'm hitting that first fire sigil, which almost hits everything here, and as well, my fiery brand is now rolling on everything. My prio target marked with skull, or orange in this case, is the Shreddinator, and I'm hitting it with that soul cleave fracture combo, using hunt off CD, and you can see still at this point I haven't pressed meta. I'm going to pause this here. As you can see, none of my teams actually use Shadow Meld other than my Boomkin, who's using this for damage. When he has press Shadow Meld, he does get 2 stacks of Nature's Grace, so this was an easy hit for him, but my DK doing 30 million DPS still does not have threat and did not need to press Shadow Meld. Alright, so that's how I did this pull properly. Let's skip ahead here to how I didn't do this pull properly, and I almost let my team die. You're going to see I still do the same thing here. I go over to the right, I hunt these first mobs on the right, and I'm going to be bringing them into the lust pull. I close up my windows here because I was kind of blundering a little bit, but I hunt in and immediately throw glaive for a little bit of extra threats. I call for pants up, I tag with glaive, I brand, I glaive again, and as well I go into Feldev. Now, the mistake I made here is I actually used both charges of my glaive and I didn't see the recharge time. So you're going to see what happens here, and this is a very important part for the pull because my DPS is already starting to dot everything and send. I blunder and don't pull this pack properly. What I should have done is waited the 1 second and then used my glaive to throw it in, but I don't have taunt and I don't have glaive, and this results in me missing a couple globals, falling behind, and having to social it. What this results in me doing is losing threat on the Shreddinator and these mobs. You can see my mage's nameplate is yellow, and I haven't started building with my glaive on that Shreddinator, which is the prio target. I do manage to recover this though and get my sigils down and build enough threat to be able to deal with later in the pull. However, the Shreddinator runs out, I taunt it back and barely save our mage from dying in the opener. This was a mistake, but I think it's pretty good because I show a lot of my videos of how I did things perfectly, and I think this is a really good example of how I didn't do things perfectly and I could have improved a lot. I silence sigil these surveyor beams in, and because of how messed up this gather was, it did mess up my cadence and my order of operations on some of my buttons. As a result, I did use cheat death here. I still haven't used Metamorphosis as I do want to save it for the next pull, but if you want to use meta here, that's completely acceptable too. My next pull is big, and it's probably, I think, the scariest pull in the dungeon in my head, so saving meta for it's really good. I feel like when I'm in Bloodlust, and if I use my sigils properly, so using both fiery sigils and everything's gathered, I don't really often cheat on this pull. I think this is the first time I've actually cheated on this pull, but I did make that grave mistake in gather, and it made it a lot harder for me. Alright, so I'm going down here, I'm tagging the surveyor with brand, and I am fracture soul cleaving these mobs. The reason why I don't go and pull right away is I want to get a little bit of threat before my DPS just rip off of me and get frustrated. Another point here is I'll pause quickly, you'll see that I still haven't dropped a fire sigil. I'm going to be using Sigil of Chains and then pressing Feldev to get threat on everything, and then using my sigils for a ton of threat and damage. Saving your sigils to late is an imperative, and I would really recommend more Vengeance Demon Hunters start doing this. Stop using your sigils for gather threats, as you are going to struggle with threat later on when dealing with some of these big DPS, and as well, you have to recognize too, when they're not on everything, you're not going to be getting the damage benefit from it. You're going to be doing a lot less damage, which means a lot less leech, and you're going to lose that parry activation on other mobs. Once everything's gathered here, as you can see, I'm still popping off and doing quite a bit of damage. That's because I didn't use those sigils early, I didn't decree early, I didn't use fiery sigil, and I'm waiting until everything is grouped together before hitting these mobs. My priority target in this pull is the Surveyor, and I'm making sure that I at least build enough threat on it so that my Arcane Mage doesn't pull off of it. Once enough threat is established on it, if I need to swap targets to kind of even out this pack, I can. But remember, when you're using your Glaive combo as Aldrachi Reaver, you are going to want to put all your damage into one mob, as this is going to be kind of your funnel target for your Wounded Quarry benefit from your Hero Talent tree. Once this pack is dead, I'm going to be grabbing a couple bombs and a couple divers and going into the next Architect. The reason why I do this here is in my route I actually need a ton of crab bombs, and these things absolutely hurt, so you're going to have to respect these a little bit. I do glaive the divers over, I get a little bit of threat on these, and I drop a fiery sigil here to try to pick up everything, but I do miss those two crabs, which you'll see a little bit here. Isn't that much of a deal, but I'm going to pause again. With these divers, one really cool trick here is you can actually double jump up this ledge and hit Sigil of Chains to drag them up here. This saves these divers from pathing all the way around and causing threat issues and being stuck casting them back. So as you can see, I jump, I hit my Sigil of Chains, I jump over the ledge, and I go into Feldev. Once all these mobs are in, I'll be able to go and hit the scaffolding and as well start building on these mobs. Once you're in this pack, it's pretty easy to sustain yourself. Your priority mob is going to be the Architect once it comes in, so make sure you do hit Taunt on it if you haven't built already. I'm going to be rolling Fiery Brand on it and as well building my Reaver's Glaive. You can see that Hunt is off CD and I'm going to be sitting here hitting that Reaver's Glaive on this target. One really cool trick about these harpooners that not a lot of people know is that they can't actually cast, together. They actually have to cast in sequence, which means that they'll only cast one at a time. This makes it so that you could actually, in theory, pull all the harpooners all at once and just alternate kicks from your team. If you do overlap on kicks, you can use things like, Chaos Nova, Imprison, Sigil of Misery, and Sigil of Chains to kind of delay casts until you get that next kick back up. An important trick too about the crabs, which we didn't actually do in this video and I should talk about, is if you CC the crabs with something like a Typhoon or a Supernova from a mage, they'll actually not blow up and not do any damage, so it is kind of a neat trick. Unfortunately, I don't get to showcase it in this video, but I might in a soon video as it was pretty recent technology we figured out. It might have been well known to other people, but I was actually not aware of it until I think after this run. In this pull, I did request my mage to set up a skull on his priority target, so I will be hitting that with my Reaver's Glaive. You'll see a common theme here in a lot of my videos. All my big prio targets are changed to the color orange. I did this through Playter through a really simple custom option by going through MDT, finding the mobs that I found of interest, and making sure I just changed their default color to orange. I do have a Playter link in my Discord if you are interested in it, if you don't want to do it yourself, but I would really recommend doing this if you are playing Aldrachi Reaver, and if you're just tanking in general. I think having a good idea for what priority mobs are is great for packs where you want to put as much damage as you can into, and as well you have to build threat against classes like Elemental Shaman and Arcane Mage. These two classes specifically do a ton of single target damage, and they benefit from funnel, meaning that a lot of their damage is going to be soaked into one mob. As most of this pack dies, I am going to be snapping up the Crocolisks into this boss. The reason why I do this is for, again, my Arcane Mage funnel. You'll see here, as this Tradition goes out, I am going to be tagging this Croc with a Glaive, pulling it up here, and letting them snap onto me. Once they're snapped onto me, I'm going to be waiting for them to stop evading before pulling into boss. The issue that I have with these Crocs sometimes is if you do choose to snap them up, they're going to sit here and start randomly biting at random people, including your healer, and if they do this, they will just end up killing them. You might need to press a couple Soul Cleaves, and you'll notice that I Fiery Sigiled really late to make sure that I got threat on all of them before I go. I jump, I Vengeful, and I'm into the boss, and I always pull this boss with Fiery Brand. I would say that, depending on the key level, you might not have realized that Wallop does that much damage, but it is something that you should respect, and I would really recommend that if you are trying to progress this key, making sure that you respect every tank buster. This includes pressing Fiery Brand, Feldev, and Metamorphosis alternating on Bronze Wallops. The problem with Bronze specifically on this boss is that sometimes you could get into a sequence where he's charging away and you can't build Frailty on him. You might not have a lot of souls and you might not have been able to spend, and as you can see here, I did go into meta because I'm struggling with these Crocolisks. If Bront does come in and melee you at a really bad time or hit that wall up and you have no buttons, it is very possible that you cheat or you can die. You can see right now specifically I have 9 stacks of the Crocolisk Bite, which means I'm taking 50% less healing. I think it is 5% per stack, so I guess 45, but as the Crocs do die here, I am jumping over, and now my imperative is keeping Kiza and Braun together. You're going to see that every time Kiza jumps, I am dragging Bronze over to her because I want to maximize the cleave damage that my team has on this encounter. This is also very good for my damage, and more importantly as well, my ability to make sure I'm always building on Bronze. With an Arcane Mage in the group, your team should be hitting Bront pretty hard, and it is going to revolve around you having to split these up if they get too low. If you do happen to kill these bosses at different times, they will enrage and deal empowered abilities. If Bront is alive for too long, he will cast a really nasty wallop that is empowered and will do a ton of extra damage, which can also cheat you. You're going to see here that again, I drag these two bosses together as soon as I can, and I'm just alternating defensives on the Tank Buster. I actually didn't press anything on that one, and you're going to see a really unfortunate scenario which happens here towards the end of this fight. In the right hand of my screen, below my throw glaive, above my weak aura, you can see that my cheat death is coming up in 46 seconds. This was the cheat death from that first pull in the dungeon, which caused me a little bit of grief. You're going to notice, however, that I do cheat again, and the only other time I cheat in this key is on this boss. We do let a bomb go off there, as we do actually miss the charge, which is kind of unfortunate, so I do commit darkness. But what ends up happening here is something pretty sad. You're going to see here that Bront does come in, and I did use Brand and Feldev to cover that explosion with the Tank Buster. Because this did happen, the only thing I have left here is meta, and I don't really want to press it. As Bront charges back in here in a second, you're going to see that I have no frailty on Bront, and as well, I have to leap out and lose all my Painbringer stacks trying to get that last bomb. I should have called for a Pain Sip here, but as Bront comes in, I get meleeed in the back and I immediately cheat. This absolutely sucks, as the rest of this dungeon can be really hard on Vengeance, and I want to make sure that I have a little bit of a failsafe. However, now I have to play extra well as I have no cheat death going into Big Mama. Big Mama is probably one of the tougher tank, healer, and DPS encounters in this entire season. I would really recommend you treat it with respect. As you get into this encounter, you're going to have to be cognizant of the fact that you're going to have to pull in lots of mobs onto her in addition to her regular set of Mecha Drones. Before doing Big Mama, you can see that we have less coming up in 50 seconds, and I am going to be doing the Demolitionist pack. These Demolitionists are stationary, so you're going to need a death grip if you want to do this pull. But you can see there, I do one fiery sigil, which I'm going to regret in a little bit for a little bit of a threat problem. I'm going to let these first RPGs go off, and I'm going to sigil up chains. You can see that one Demolitionist got stunned out there, and he had his cast cancelled. I do put the Silent Sigil out, and now that all the mobs stacked and Elysian Decree is out, or sorry, Firebrand is out, I'm going to hit Elysian Decree. At this point, this pack is no longer that hard. All we're trying to do is call stops when these mobs are synced up. However, this is a little bit harder now because we let the one mob kind of sit out there and cast, so these mobs are no longer synced up, so they're a little bit harder to stop. My job is the tank, or at least in my group, I am usually the de facto shot caller, so I am calling whatever stops I can to make sure that these things do not recast or reload. Once they hit reload, which is about an 8-second cast, they will cast RPG very quickly, but if you stop the reload, they'll just be stuck in this never-ending sequence of trying to reload their gun and recast that RPG. You can see that this pull isn't that bad and it's not that confusing once you kind of get into it. I think that you can also disrespect this pull if you're not careful. I would really recommend using Metamorphosis if you need to on this pull, rotating Fiery Brand and Feldev, as there's Inspectors, Contractors, Soldiers, and those Demolitionists. That pull is massive, and now I'm going to be pulling all these soldiers into the boss. I have 3 soldiers, 2 contractors, and I'm going to be pulling Big Mama. One quick note here is I always make sure I have Fiery Brand on pull, and I will not pull this boss until Fiery Brand is back. The first tank buster on Big Mama with all this trash can be very deadly, and in conjunction with a bunch of melees, you could just fall over or cheat. Remember, I don't have cheat death right now because I did proc it on that Bront wallop, so I am a little bit more scared than I would normally be on Big Mama, but I'm going to show you exactly what you need to do on this encounter to get through this with very limited help from your healer, and just making sure that you can alternate your defensives properly. Again, on the first tank buster of every phase, I'm going to be committing that Fiery Brand. In addition to this, throughout the encounter, I'm going to be alternating things like Feldev, like Metamorphosis, and Elysian Decree. Elysian Decree is an amazing tank buster support button, as it's going to shatter 3 additional souls in addition to your talent soul sigils, which is going to shatter an additional soul when you put down a sigil. This means that when you press Decree and you're already capped on souls, you are shattering 4 additional souls, giving you 4 stacks of Painbringer. As this boss goes into the phase, I am making sure I clean everything up, and I'm hitting the boss and building for frailty. If you ever do get the tank buster at the start of this phase, I would make sure that you press Fiery Brand, as the kill block buster, whatever it's called, plus the tank buster can just cheat you or kill you. I do throw an Empowered Glaive up with the soldiers as I do double jump, and I want to pull these into this part of the encounter. Once all these mobs are down, I'm hitting that Fiery Sigil, and as well, I have Fiery Brand rolling on the boss. Remember, there are a couple tricks to deal with magic tank busters as Vengeance Demon Hunter. Most importantly, you want 3 things rolling for every tank buster. 1, you want to press Immo Aura, as it's going to reduce the magic damage you take by 10%. 2, you're going to want to press a sigil, literally any sigil, whether it be Fiery Sigil, Silent Sigil, Sigil of Chains, Sigil of Misery, or Decree, as you are going to get the Demon Muzzle buff. What is Demon Muzzle? I talked about this a lot in Season 1 and in some of my videos, but whenever you apply a sigil to an enemy mob, you are going to get 8% magic reduction for 8 seconds. This is insane value, and I don't think I see a lot of Demon Hunters even use it this season at all, but you should be trying to use your Demon Muzzle when you're not covered by any defensive. Demon Muzzle is extremely free, and it works with any sigil, meaning that you can use things like Silence or Misery on bosses to apply that 8% magic damage reduction. As this boss goes in the jumpstart phase, we do happily skip that next tank buster within the phase, and I'm holding on to Brand here as I'm going to be rolling it as soon as this phase starts. Again, anytime these tank busters come out, I want to make sure that if I don't have a defensive, I at least have that Demon Muzzle effect and Immo Aura active, and as well, a really useful trick is using that Elysian Decree. I keep calling it Elysian Decree, but they have renamed it to Sigil of Spite, so if you are new to Vengeance Demon Hunter and if you heard me say Decree a couple times, it does mean Sigil of Spite, so that is what I'm referring to. It is your 1-minute CD and capstone talent in the Demon Hunter tree, and I would really recommend watching the Yoda guide as how he explains it. I'm not going to go to in-depth here of how to use Decree on a lot of bosses, but it is super useful on Big Mama if you don't have a defensive to cover some of this damage. You'll see that my team here does a really sloppy job at some of these baits, and I get kind of annoyed, but I do put my Decree down for this next tank buster. I do have Demon Muzzle, and I do have that Decree rolling for those extra souls. You can see that I took that last tank buster without even a big defensive like Fiery Brand or Meta, and I was completely okay on plus 19. That just goes to show how insanely impactful some of your toolkit can be even outside of defensives, and you should be relying on it a little bit more than you're typically used to on this encounter. I would recommend treating each one of these Electro Crushes with the respect that it deserves, including rolling Fiery Brand, Meta, or Feldev. And if you don't, ask for something like a Pain Suppression, an Iron Bark, a Time Dilation, or a Guardian Spirit. This first tank buster comes out, again, I'm in Fiery Brand. You'll see that throughout this entire encounter, I do hit the boss quite a bit. I think that our group DPS is pretty high. You've probably seen almost all these people in my videos before, and I think our group damage is really good. So I don't end up actually building too much on the Mecha Drones. I'd recommend that if your group damage is a little bit lower, or you're afraid that these ads aren't dying, to make sure that you start hitting a Mecha Drone. This will reduce the damage that you take, and as well reduce the frailty you have in Big Mama, but it is going to be a ton of damage if you can funnel into it. Now, our druid actually does the skip for the box in this video, and it's kind of unfortunate because the video I was going to post earlier 2 weeks ago when I did a plus 18 before the turbo boost had me doing the skip. But I'm not going to talk too much about it. Maybe I'll put out a YouTube short of how to do all the skips in this dungeon. But if that would be useful, feel free to drop something in the comments and I'll show you exactly how to do this skip and make sure that you never pull this Blood Warper. As we go up into the next pack, I am going to be grabbing these soldiers and hyenas at the bottom of the stairs. Pay attention here to how I do this gather because I want to make sure I get threats. I taunt the hyena first to make sure I get it in combat, and still I have not used that Fiery Sigil because I want to make sure that I get all these mobs together. I Vengeful twice, I immediately roll Fiery Brand on the Blood Warper, and all these mobs are coming in. I do save those sigils again. I'm going to hit my health pot here, I think, because I don't cheat. And as well, now that I have my sigils down and I hit that Nova, if Fiery Brand is rolling, I'm going to be able to do an absolute ton of damage. Now that all these mobs are in, you can see that there's absolutely zero threat issues. I slam that decree, my sigils are rolling. I don't think this is actually the cleanest gather I've ever done on the Blood Warper, but one thing to note is to make sure that you have a defensive for every Warp of Blood. This includes alternating things like Fiery Brand and Metamorphosis, as I do think that this is one of the hardest packs in the game. You're going to be dealing with a ton of soldier stacks, as you can see there. I'm at 4 and I'm probably going to go a lot higher. You're going to be dealing with the Blood Warp, which is going to give you a massive healing absorb, and you have to deal with things like the hyenas, which do a pretty nasty bite. These soldiers are no joke, and you can see here that I'm just scared at the end of this pack and I end up kiting. There's no reason for me to blow my cheat on these mobs, as this pack is almost already dead, so if I need to get out, I'm just going to leave the pack. Again, I think this pack is something that you should treat with the utmost respect. I see almost every single Vengeance Demon Hunter I play with in my Boomy, except Aura, probably cheat on this pull. It's kind of crazy. I just see them fall over time after time after time. I haven't died there yet personally on my Vengeance Demon Hunter, but I have died there on my Brew. I think it's like one of the hardest Brew pulls in the game, just because you don't have enough self-sustain. As we do pull these kelps in, I am going to be pulling some crabs in too, and you need to make sure here that you pop a defensive. I think a lot of tanks too don't understand how really disruptive these crabs can be and how much tank damage they are. In this pull, I am calling all the stops on my Demon Hunter, including using my own and making sure that I'm alternating things like calling for my Druid stops, my Mage stops, and my Priests. If you're not in a coordinated group, I'm sure that these kelps have caused you some trouble before. I would make sure that typing in party chats, just tell everybody that I'm going to do my stops first. Like I use my Nova, my Chains, my Sigil, my Silence. And then having people do after is going to be really, really helpful to you. I'd really recommend that, especially if you're pugging and trying to learn how to pug title on BDH or deal with some of these more complicated pulls, that in a dungeon like this, you have a plan set up before you go in. Communicate with your team, find out what composition you have, and track their stops like I do here on the left of my screen. This makes it very easy for me to call absolutely everything and babysit my team if I need to, if I'm in comms, and if not, I'm just going to be playing the game regularly. We are going to be pulling in these divers into the boss, which means that there are going to be 3 kicks. As I pull them in, I hit a fire sigil, I build a little bit of threats, and as well, I'm going to be vengefulling and pulling the boss with Brand. If you watched my plus 12 video about 2 months ago, you'll see that I always pull this boss with Fiery Brand, and the reason why is if I do it right on pull, it'll be up for every other tank buster in the fight, like clockwork. We are alternating kicks here and making sure that we don't get hit by the bombs on the ground, but the reason why we pull these divers into boss is they're pretty free, and they provide funnel for our Arcane Mage. Arcane Mages love funnel, and when they press that Arcane Surge, you could see that on the meters with a couple extra mobs, they are just absolutely blasting. While these divers are up, I am going into Metamorphosis because I don't want to take that Tank Buster in conjunction with any melee hits. Again, my rotation on this boss is fairly simple, and I don't really have too much to do. This fight is all on my healer and my DPS using their defensives appropriately, and me using Darkness when it's called for. As a tank, there's not really too much you can do to enable your team on this encounter, but one thing you can do is if you do have the divers coming in, you can sign or call kicks. If you are watching this video and you are trying to figure out your variants for Vengeance and figuring out what route you want to do, I would not recommend bringing divers into this boss if you are in a pug and it's with people you haven't played with. I don't think there's any really reason to. I think like you just easily play them separately or pull them into that Architect pack. I think it's really easy, especially like in title keys right now in LFG. I think a couple of my no-comms runs have just brought the divers in, but if you're progressing this key on Demon Hunter, I just wouldn't do it. Just stick your time and split it up. Other than that, for the rest of this encounter, all I'm going to be doing is alternating that Fiery Brand, that Faldev, and that Metamorphosis. There's nothing really too important here, so I'm going to take a break for a second and watch as we finish this encounter. As you can see, that Fiery Brand comes up right away for that Sludge Claws, and I'm able to hit it right before and be completely fine. One mistake I do see some Vengeance Demon Hunters make is they do cheat on this boss, which I think is crazy. You have a lot of tools in this encounter not to cheat, but you want to make sure that, you know, you're just alternating your defensives. There's no reason to press them outside the tank buster. You can see here that I do pull in these 2 crabs as we are going into executes.
Unseen plus points faster with the Scotiabank Ultimate Package and bank more entertainment. Learn more at scotiabank.com.
Apparently I did get an ad on my music.
Scotiabank, you're richer than you think.
That's actually kind of funny. Maybe that's a good blooper. But I've been posting these videos with like some non-copyright show music. And this playlist I really love. It's like a 12-hour music loop. They finally put ads on it, which is crazy to me. Like, it's like, hey man, like the whole point of this is like no copyright music. Why are you putting ads on the no copyright music? But anyway, as we finish off the boss, we're killing off this last bombshell crab and we're going downstairs. I am going to be showing you now how to skip bubbles and the exact moment you need to be doing this with. I see a lot of Vengeance Demon Hunters make a mistake on this bubbles pull, and it's because they pull bubbles too early. You want to finish bubbles is RP before you pull them, and that includes waiting for his burp. What do I mean by that? Let's watch and find out. Once you activate the bubble skip, he's going to jump down, crush these soldiers, flatten them, and he's going to come out here, do his little burp in the air, and once he burps, you're able to pull him. I do pull him with taunt, and I have to wait for that burp. The reason why is if I don't wait for that burp, he's going to start a spell queue early. He's not going to be able to move, but he will be in combat, forcing his spell queue to be all messed up. This way, pulling bubbles is a failsafe shoo-in. He will be coming back and running at the wall with you, and you are going to need Shadow Meld to perform the skip. I'm going to wait for his frontal or the bubbles to go out, then he's going to cast his frontal, then I'm going to leap once, leap twice, and then Shadow Meld. Ready? 1, 2, meld, and I'm going to go into the next pack with Glaive. I immediately Feldev on the Scather, and I'm going to be tagging the mini boss here with just a taunt. I don't have Fiery Brand here, which kind of sucks. I should have actually waited a second, but at this point now I am going to be rolling Fiery Brand, gripping, and then calling for a Druid's Solar Beam. I think having Fiery Brand on this pull is really good, as these jump starters can really fuck you up. The rest of this dungeon does have a couple tank busters, and you need to be cognizant of them. I think that I've seen some tanks die and cheat here too, and all you need to really do is make sure that you have something rolling for the jump starter, and if not, you have a frailty dump. What's a frailty dump? I talk about this a little bit in my Motherload video, which I posted a couple weeks ago, but anytime you're going to take a tank buster and you don't have that Fiery Brand, that Metamorphosis, or that Feldev active, what you can actually end up doing is spending all of your souls and all of your fury on frailty. This is spamming Soul Cleave before Tank Buster to maximize the benefit you get from Soul Crush and getting that massive DR before that Tank Buster. This, in conjunction with things like Elysian Decree, can absolutely save you from a very, very difficult Tank Buster that you might otherwise have died on. You'll see here that I'm about to take the Tank Buster, and I do not take it with anything except Metamorphosis. Now that Fiery Brand's back up, I am going to be hitting Fiery Brand on that next Tank Buster. I do grip into beam, and I'm extending my meta with that Feldev, and holding on to that brand for when this all fades. In this pack, we are just alternating kicks, but remember, a trick that you can do too is when you're taking these Spark Slams, just make sure Ammo Aura is active, and as well as that Demon Muscle effect from your Sigils. As this pack goes down, I am going to be showing you how to do the last and final skip of this dungeon, which is the double jump starter skip. The reason why we skip this is this can be extremely resource intensive and slow. I have seen some routes now playing it as part of like the new China routes, so I will talk about it a little bit. But if you are choosing to play these things, you don't have to really waste resources either on doing the skip. They are a lot of count, but they are kind of deadly. So in my route, I do choose to skip them as we do get all our count before this, meaning that our timer is excellent. We're gonna have 7 minutes to do the last boss, which means that we're more than okay if we don't die. As these inspectors do die, I'm gonna be taking the jump starters over to the right in this little cubby. You're gonna see that there's a cubby on the right hand side, and I'm gonna be taunting one, pressing Feldev, and then just dragging it into the wall. My team is going to run by on the left, and as well, I'm going to be sitting here, then jumping once, jumping twice, and then hitting Shadow Melt. There's really no reason not to commit Fel Dev here, so just make sure you press it. As I meld, I'm into the boss room, and I will be going into this boss. I'm waiting for Clemens to top up our team a little bit before we do get Geezle Gigazapped, and I will be showing you how to do this encounter properly on Vengeance without cheating. I do make a mistake on this fight at some point, I think, and I will walk through it, but for now, make sure that you do not pull this boss with Fiery Brand. This is one of the few bosses this season I don't pull with Fiery Brand just because he starts his entire phase with this turbocharge. I do cancel a hunt there because I got a glaive proc right before and I wasn't paying attention, but I do use that glaive right out. Before every tank buster, you're going to see that again, I apply that demon muzzle effect, my MO aura, and any conjunction of tank CDs. On this first tank buster, I'm extremely tanky as I did have Fel Dev and Fiery Brand, and for the next one, I'm going to be using Metamorphosis. I always make sure I'm pinging where I'm going with my puddle, but my team here does kind of overlap, so I decided to change my plan. Again, Tank Buster is coming soon, so I'm starting to think about what I need. I have Demon Muzzle down, I have MOR active, and as well, I'm going to be hitting that Metamorphosis. So again, I have 10% DR from that Demon Muzzle, 10% DR from my MO Aura, which I actually put on after the Tank Buster. This Tank Buster is a physical in its application and magic in its dot. So the actual initial hit only relies on armor, so making sure that you have Demon Spikes up for every hit, as well as an additional defensive is going to be really good. And then the ticking damage after is magical, so making sure that for the ticking damage you always have that MO Aura, and as well you make sure that you have that Demon Muscle effect. Again, the next phase starts, and what do you know, I have Fiery Brand back, meaning that I can hit Fiery Brand on that first tank buster without a problem. I do drop pretty low here, but I go ahead and use my Frailty Dump to build and generate some souls, and as well make sure that I'm utilizing that Painbringer. I do ping my puddle, I am dropping my sigil here to get that Demon Muzzle active, and I'll be using Fel Dev on this next tank buster. My Demon Muzzle actually drops here a little bit early, so I go ahead and hit that Elysian Decree. I Fel Dev, and I throw that glaive, and I'm back into spamming Soul Cleave on the boss to generate or spend those souls. At this point, I've been pretty much immortal, and again, I don't really run a on-use trinket on Demon Hunter, so I don't really need anything like the Ritual Mud or Bomb Suits. I'm more than fine in like all these keys. I think I talk about it a little bit in my Prairie short video, but I think using an on-use trinket is good, and if you think you need to use it, I would definitely recommend doing it. I personally don't really care for it, as I can just use a Pain Sup, but if you are playing with no Disc Priest or a healer without an external, I would really recommend picking up that Bomb Suit if you can from that Dinar Bender. Again, phase starts, and I'm back to, what do you know, using Fiery Brands. I do hit Immo Aura, I do hit Spikes, and now you're going to see my one blunder of the fight. I do get zapped here by the Spark, as I think I get stunned in this puddle. I don't really remember exactly what happens here, but I think I'm too close to the puddle or something. Yeah, we end up taking the, somebody ends up taking my puddle. So I don't have a Pain Sup here, and I'm waiting to cheat, but I'm just going to slam that health pot as soon as I'm out and hit that sigil, and I'm more than okay. That was really unlucky, as we all went to the same location for our puddles, and Clemens somehow kept me alive. It's kind of neat, because I just expected to just have him let me cheat there. If I cheated, it would have been more than fine. I think he was scared on this AoE after, if I remember right, because he used a lot of buttons to kind of keep me alive. But if that does happen to you and you do have cheat, don't panic. Let your cheat proc, as it's just going to save you and heal you, and you're going to be more than fine after. I wouldn't recommend overcommitting any phase. If something happens and you fuck up, take the battle res or use the cheats, or else you're just going to fall behind perma. Don't overlap meta, brand, Fel Dev all at once, or else you're just going to go into the next phase and just die. You can see at this point, I have committed that Fiery Brand on the first tank buster. I'm going to be committing that Fel Dev on the second one, using that Demon Muzzle effect if I have it, keeping MOR up, and the boss is going to be dead. With that in mind, this is how I timed my plus 19 Floodgate with every trick on every gather on my Vengeance Demon Hunter. If you like this sort of content, feel free to drop something in the comments. I work pretty hard on making a lot of these commentaries, including like writing notes and making sure I rewatch the VODs a couple times before to see certain points of interest that I think people might be paying attention to. In addition, please come check out my Discord or my Twitch, where I stream pretty frequently. The community's been growing quite a bit, and I have a pretty active conversation there about what people would like to see, feedback, tips and tricks, and all my UI, which is available for free. Thanks again for all the love, thanks again for all the support, good luck with your keys, and hopefully this helped you in becoming a better Avenged Steam Hunter. And I'll catch you guys in the next one.